Welcome to Easy Email Marketing. I'm your host, Yale Keown, mum, FIFO wife, MBA, coffee lover, survivor superfan, and creator of the email experience. In Easy Email Marketing, you'll benefit from my nearly 20 years experience, where I'll be teaching you all the tips, tricks, and insider info on how to create feel-good, non-spammy experiences for your subscribers. Let's get stuck in. Welcome back to the Easy Email Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Yale Keown, and today's episode is part 2 of a series I am doing all around the world of AI and what has happened recently. If you haven't listened to the previous episode, I do highly encourage you to check it out because that's where I talk about the big picture and I talk about all the different elements of AI that you might want to be thinking about, like the actual practical concepts, and then this episode builds from there. So last episode I introduced this idea of Claude AI being your marketing department. So that is where chat is like, walking over to your teammate's desk for a quick conversation, deep research as your analyst going away and doing a proper briefing, projects to give each client or campaign their own dedicated office space, and connectors that plug your team into all the rest of the business systems that you have around the place. And then I mentioned skills, and I called them the biggest game changer. Well, because they are. So that's what we're diving into today with the different types of skills that you would want to create in your Claude account to get the most out of it. So before we get stuck in, let's refresh ourselves about what a skill really is. So remember the marketing department analogy. A skill is like writing your team a procedures manual. So you document exactly how you want certain things done, including things like your brand voice, your frameworks, your way of approaching things. And then every time Claude does that type of task, it follows that playbook or procedure. You don't need to remind it. You don't need to re-explain it. You don't need to reattach the documents. It just knows. Whether you're in a chat, whether you're in a project, wherever you are, it remembers. So you don't need to tell it every time. You set it up once and it's just there, running in the background, doing everything. So that is what shifts it from being like where you need to micromanage it to actually being a team of intelligent people working for you that you can riff off, that you can work with and get great results from. So to break this down, to help you really conceptualize this, we'll walk through 5 different types of skills or categories of skills that you may want to integrate into your business. And then at the end, I will talk about how to choose which ones to work on first and how to get started with your first skill. So let's think about this in layers. So the first layer are your identity and your voice skills. These are the things that make everything sound like you. I know one of the biggest concerns, of course, is that people think, it just doesn't sound like me. It just sounds like AI. Well, these skills will prevent that from happening. So this is where you have your brand voice guide. So the tone of voice, the words you use, the words you never use, your openings, your hooks, your stories, your positioning, who you are and who you serve, your points of difference. You would have your target market profiles here. So who your ideal client is, how they speak, what keeps them up at night, their buyer personas, and also your content pillars, the topics you cover, your messaging angles, the thought leadership you have. So all of these things are built into skills. And some of you may be thinking, hang on, I've got those in documents. Yale, you've told me before to do this research. I've done my deep research and I've got this great document with my buyer personas. Why can't I just attach that information? I have it there as a document. Yes, of course you can do that. But the difference between attaching it as a document to a project or a chat is that it would only get referenced to in that context. So only when you're in that project will it refer to that document. Whereas a skill is something that it will refer to across everything no matter what. So things like your tone of voice, that's something you want referred to everywhere. So if you've got that built in as a skill, you can do it. So basically what you do in this instance is if you've got that document, if you've got that research, if you've got that somewhere, it's when you go and create the skill, you just say, here's the input, make a skill from this. So you can have it done in like minutes, which is really, really cool. Layer number 2 are your content creation skills. So these are the skills that tell you specifically this type of content should be created this way. So your email copywriting, what your email should look like. It will be your podcast formats. It will be your social media approach, and how a caption, even though you got the same idea, would be different on Instagram from TikTok. Your blog posts, your promotional copy, your full welcome series, each of those different content creation areas will have their own skill. And it could be from a very practical perspective, or from, we want this exact outline or this exact layout, and we need 10 hashtags or whatever it is that you have issued instructions for. But it will know that as soon as you say, generate an Instagram caption for this, it will just do it based around the skill combined with whatever brand voice guide you have given it. And then combined with the next one, which is the strategy and thinking skills. Because this is really, really cool. So these skills aren't about how you write, they're about how you think. These are your frameworks. So there are 2 ways you can work with this. The first way is bringing an expert advisor onto your team. So I have, for example, a brand strategist skill. So I got Claude to develop this skill. Let's say go and research the latest best practice when it comes to brand strategy. I also gave specific links to people I trust, to people I follow, to experts that I like, I put in transcripts of podcast episodes or YouTube videos that I really enjoyed that on that topic that gave great frameworks, said learn all you can. And it learnt that. And then I said, right, now put that into a skill. And then based on that, I said, okay, do some brand messaging, and I ended up with a 150-page brand messaging document, but that's a story for another day. So we can have a board of strategists and experts in particular niches trained up as skills. So at the moment, I've got my brand strategist, my product, digital product strategist, TikTok, Instagram, a few people. The second way you can use this is for your own frameworks and IPs. So I have built a skill around my 5 email experiences framework and my engaging emails framework. So this means that the system understands my IP, my processes, how things fit together. And so when it's looking at all the things, it will look at it in that lens. And I'm going to be working on it more and more about really honing in all of my email copywriting rules, all of my approach to engaging emails, to develop tools to hopefully help others. But I'm putting my brain in there. So we can train it to be an expert. So they are 3 kind of bigger picture ones. Layer 1, like your identity and voice skills, which are about things sounding like you. You've got your content creation skills, which is like how to write in a certain way. Then you've got your strategy and thinking skills, which are about, bringing the expertise, yours and others, to the table. Then we get a little bit more practical. So then we've got our systems and our operational skills. So these are procedural. These are the task-based ones that handle your repetitive processes. So things like how to add content to your database. So I have a specific skill for adding blog posts to Notion. That means I never have to explain the process again. So I don't need to explain how to format it or where to put it or what categories to use. I can ask it, say, hey, can you put this, just copy and paste the URL and say, put this in Notion for me. So instead of me going into Notion, and yes, I could go into Notion and I could put in, here's the URL, here's the categories and do it myself instead, or I can just go, boom, here's that URL, and it populates it completely with the full blog content, everything. So you can think about anything on an operational level that you were doing on a repetitive basis and add it in. So this is one of those things where it's like, okay, maybe if you notice that it's something you're doing over and over again, just the next time you do it, build it as a skill. And instead of going and documenting a procedure or an SOP, like they used to tell you in the olden days when you're training someone in your team, let's just put it into a skill and let it do it for you. And side note, I am curious now, if I put it into a skill, if I could get Claude just to produce an SOP from that, which I could give to a team member if I wanted them to do it. Okay, and then the final one is client or content, like specific skills. So if, like me, you do client work, these could be slightly different from your everything else that you've got going on, because the way your clients work could be different, and they are specific to that person. So they might have their own brand voice and their own audience. They would have like their unique email platform. They have the different way it's set up. So yes, I could put that as a document, but it also means that I could also have skills that are specific to how to get the specific data out of Klaviyo that I want in a format that helps that client based around, their list structure, their segment structure, all of that stuff. So I can have some really, really specific skills around that if it's things that I'm accessing all of the time. And I don't need to revisit every single session. I don't need to tell it what's going on. It is just there. So 5 different layers of skills. Your identity and voice skills, your content creation skills, strategy and thinking skills, systems and operations skills, and then any client-specific skills. But where do you start? Okay, well, to me, the answer is obvious, your brand voice one. And because that just forms the foundation of everything. So your brand voice one and the target audience. If it understands how you want to say things, it will make everything else sound better. That's where your authenticity, for lack of a better term, comes from. And it's also very important to start here as well, is because we feel like when we start using AI and when we just use the chat, it sounds generic, it sounds robotic. We've got that perception of, oh, that's obviously AI. By having that brand voice skill done right from the beginning, it means that everything will instantly sound better, even if it's not perfect. Even if it's halfway there, it's better than nothing. And it's one that you keep upgrading over time. The second one, then, your ideal client profile. Understanding who your audience is and what makes them tick, what keeps them up at night, what their challenges are, and how you help them. That's really important. So I would work at that first layer. And hopefully you've got some documents around that will, you can just literally upload and get it to convert to skills. If you don't, definitely check out, the AI section of the email experience if you're an email experience member. And I have exercises on how to get that information. Obviously, I've got a lot of upgrades to do with all the things that I'm learning, but we can convert those into skills. So how do you actually create it? Really, really easy. The good news is that you don't have to go and write these from scratch yourself. You just write them with Claude. So surprisingly, you can actually use the chat to write Claude skills. So what you do is you grab all your documents. So your branding, your content that you like, whatever it is, the references you want it to link. And so whatever skills you go into, I believe it's customize. And then there's a skills section. You go add skill and it will give you some options. And you say write with Claude. And then it will start a little chat. And you say, here's what I want it to do. It'll ask you some clarifying questions. You might map out the specific process, or you might say, I want this as a skill to be my strategist, or I want this for this client, or I want it to be putting my blog post into Notion. And then we'll step you through it, ask some clarifying questions. You upload the links, and then you do a couple of tests and see what it comes up with. And then you save. You could have, if you've already got a brand voice document somewhere, you can have a brand voice skill done in 2 minutes. It is amazing. So that's where you will get stuck in. So I'm excited to hear if you give this a go, if you give skills a go, and what impact it will have on your business. Now, next episode, I am going to switch gears a little bit out of this practical and talk about the mindset and obviously that big concern that we have about integrity and trust and authenticity when using AI. Because this is definitely something that I struggled with over time, because I teach a lot of stuff, and I want that stuff to be good. I want it to be, legitimate. I want it to work. And obviously I have my IP and my opinions, and it needs to stay on course with those. And so I'm going to talk exactly what you can be doing to make sure that AI is merely a tool for your business to get things done faster, to get information, to get insights, but that it does not take away from who you are, your values, your stories, and your character, your voice, all of those things that are so important and that will keep you set apart from the rest of those people just using AI as the chat box. So thank you so much for joining me today. I would love to hear from you about what skills you may have given a go based on this, and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to Easy Email Marketing. It's an absolute honour that you chose to listen. If you love this episode, then it would mean the world to me if you could leave a review so that others can find this podcast and make their email marketing easy too. Finally, make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss a thing. Until next time, have an awesome day and make sure to keep showing up and serving in those inboxes.